So it seems that a new shiny Drukhari miniature has escaped confinement early. Let's talk about the Sprue leak for Lady Aurelia Malys, who looks like she'll be coming along with a codex release for Drukhari in 10th edition. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, where today we're talking about another rather interesting Warhammer 40k Sprue leak. Games Workshop does seem to have a bit of a habit of sending out plastic miniatures far before their time to be revealed, and today apparently the receivers of the leak miniature are the Drukhari, resurrecting a special character deep from the lore, who once upon a time had a datasheet, never had an official miniature, but now apparently will do. Games Workshop do seem to have been on a bit of a roll of sending out miniatures semi-regularly far before they should come out. Just in this past year we've had Fugan posted out to someone in a box that was meant for another sprue, and recently we've also had the Death Guard Lord of Poxes come out as well. Both of those were for codexes that really weren't too far away, though it seems that this one for the Drukhari might be from a little bit further in the future. At time of recording it seems that this one was posted to Reddit around about 18 hours ago. I think that was the first place that the sprue was shared. The person basically reporting that they bought the sprue in a job lot in some way, not knowing exactly how valuable it was, so was posting it up to try and get identification, to which everyone spotted that it was a new on-release miniature for the Drukhari. Again, like the Lord of Poxes and Fugan, it might well mean that we get the official model reveal sooner rather than later from Games Workshop. I feel like they often have their marketing release materials ready to go, though I suppose there's a chance that it might be less the case for the Drukhari, given that their codex is in theory quite a long time away. So far they haven't even put them on their codex release roadmap, the only codex not to be so far, so maybe they'll be a little bit less prepared than normal. Interestingly enough, this one does tie in with a digital leak I'd also had kindly shared with me a while back, and it definitely looks like the same miniature. It doesn't look like there's much debate as to what the miniature is, and it's Lady Malys for the Drukhari, one of the many Drukhari named characters who had datasheets and rules once upon a time in a codex long past for them. Previously it was a bit more common that Games Workshop might release a whole bunch of unit profiles without necessarily having the models drop at the exact same time. That's a bit less so the case now. But basically they had her alongside a few other Drukhari characters, such as Duke Slitus or Keradruak, and then they never wound up actually getting an individual miniature release. I don't know if it's partly just because Drukhari are a slightly more niche faction and not quite as collected as some of the other armies out there. And at the time, Games Workshop didn't often tend to release even necessarily one character per army per edition, so a vast amount of time could go by for some armies and not even have token support. In any case, for her herself, she's the Archon of the Cabal of the Poisoned Tongue, one of the great cabals of Comera, and one unusually known for its duplicity and poison-based tactics, even compared with the rest of them that most certainly all tend to do a bit of that. She rules some districts of the Dark City, and has a few interesting things about her character, basically a great schemer and intellect to rival Vex himself, and has often been able to predict his machinations in the past, sometimes deciding to skip town or lie low, when he's unleashed great purges and a whole bunch of her rivals have perished. At one time when that happened and she had an excursion into the webway, she was challenged by Segarak, the Harlequin deity, to a contest of wits, which she ultimately triumphed in, and as a reward was gifted 2 boons from the god, a sentient blade and a crystal heart, which according to this miniature it looks like she's wearing around her neck. It maybe seems that she isn't necessarily a disciple of Segarak, but more sort of works with the trickster deity, gets some boons from him and might enact some schemes in Comera, and has some unnatural abilities such as the power to resist psychers apparently. Though she's better known for her command, in battle she fights with the Lady's Blade and a steel-edged fan. As mentioned, had a stat line in a previous codex but never had a miniature, which Games Workshop seem to have rectified now. Getting onto the leak itself then, and this is the sprue. Basically it's the same sprue taken as a picture from the front and the back, and of course credits to the person who received these and then shared them on Reddit. Not necessarily the easiest to piece together from first glance. We've basically got a robed Drukhari character, really quite big hair as they often seem to like to have. I can see her sword and fan there, as perching upon some shattered Eldari scenery, as often seems to be the case for their special character releases. Zooming on a few of those bits before we put them all together, you can see her fan hit there with a whole bunch of razor edges on the end of it, a rather unusual and interesting looking sword there, which I guess is her gift from the Laughing God, or very serrated and deadly looking there. And there are a few more other interesting details on the sprue as well. The date on the sprue is 2023, basically confirming that it does come from a fairly recent Drukhari sculpt. It's maybe not too surprising that it's a couple of years back though. Games Workshop tends to plan out their Warhammer 40k releases a very long time in the future, and miniature designs might be completed a long time before eventual release. Just in case there was any doubt that it's her, it also has her emblem of the Cabal of the Poisoned Tongue on her wrist guard there. I saw someone point that one out on Discord. It looks like she's got a head swap, either going for a mysterious veil or a more bareheaded one. She's got a great big collar, and that looks like the crystalline heart of Segarak worn as a pendant around her neck. You can see bits of her base here as well. Looks like she's got a shattered Wraith construct bit that she's standing on, and then a bunch of Eldari scenery with some runes on it, and it looks like one bit's elevated above the others, drawn up as a sort of elevated step type thing, and you can see the little hole where her foot's supposed to go. With a whole load of chopping out the background and some cutting and sticking together, here's a very rough recreation of what her model should look like. Obviously it's not going to be a particularly great reconstruction, given that some of the parts are slightly rotated and don't really go exactly where they're supposed to be viewed straight on, but it seems that you can get the general idea. This one is partially informed by the previous leak that I had, so this should be more or less the rough pose that she's in, sort of holding out her arm to the right hand side, fan drawn across her chest, a top knot and some big hair flying off to her left, and then I'll admit I've been a little bit lazy on the base. All the Eldari architecture is being viewed from above, but basically she's got her right leg slightly elevated and on that step type thing, and the left one slightly lower. I've swapped it out for Lilith Hesperax's base here, just for demonstration purposes. Overall looks like a fairly nice looking sculpt from this first view. Hopefully Games Workshop will come along with some better pictures of it in the not too distant future though. Price wise, Games Workshop do tend to have some fairly static ones for their named character miniatures. I'd guess it'd probably be $45, £28 or €35. Named characters are often being charged just a few pounds or dollars more than their generic counterparts it seems. For rules possibilities, there's all sorts of ways that they could go down with her, but I guess some sort of powerful command abilities, given that it seems her lore revolves around being a strategic genius basically. I believe on her previous data sheets going back a long way allowed her to redeploy units, redeploying D3 of them, and that's certainly a rule that persists into current 40k, so maybe she might get a version of that back again. Otherwise could be something to represent her bond with Segarak, or the Poison Tongue's affinity for toxins. I think it's unlikely to be some sort of melee powerhouse, but likely melee to rival or exceed the regular Archon. I'd be surprised if she can't make short work of sort of Space Marine equivalents or anything lighter fairly well. In terms of when she'll actually get a release, it looks like the Drukhari could be a fair way off yet. In Games Workshop's release roadmap, they're the only codex that haven't been mentioned. We've seen teasers of all the rest. The last one that they revealed were the Leagues of Votann, which were at the end of their roadmap, alongside a bunch of what looks like secondary codexes for the Space Marines with the things like the Imperial Fists and other chapters. They confirmed Chaos Demons weren't getting a release this time around. In any case, I'd certainly hope that Lady Malys isn't the only model reveal for the Drukhari. I'm genuinely unsure whether or not she will be. There's certainly perhaps one of these single armies in Warhammer 40k that most deserves a major release wave, just because lots of their units were resin miniatures that have since been retired. So Grotesques, Beastmasters, the Court of the Archon and Urian Rakarth, none of those are on sale anymore. So it feels like an army that needs a fairly solid release wave just literally to keep them where they are, never mind add anything new or exciting. Otherwise, the big one that's always been talked about for Drukhari for absolutely ages now is Astrobel Vect. He's maybe one of the big bad antagonist characters of Warhammer 40k that's been gone for a surprisingly long time. With Games Workshop liking to release big centerpiece characters like the Silent King and Primarchs and things, he does seem a very good choice for a modern 40k release when they eventually get around to him, most likely in command from his Days of Destruction. If they're doing other named characters, they could dig into the other ones like Deuce Slices or Karajurak though. I'd be kind of surprised if they go for a major special character release wave before doing mainline units on Urian Rakarth, who you'd expect them to update first. Maybe the fact that they're coming so late in the edition could be good news for them though. Votann Guard and World Eaters were the last books of 9th edition, and all of those got good release waves, so maybe they'll have the same for the Drukhari. In any case, let me know your thoughts on the new miniature though. If Lady Malys winds up looking something like this, would you be tempted to pick her up? Or what else would you hope for a Drukhari release wave? Look forward to hearing all your thoughts down in the comments below as always. In any case, thank you for listening to this one. Feel free to subscribe to Auspex Tactics if you'd like to keep up with Games Workshop's news and releases. And if you'd like to support the channel, there's a bunch of things linked down in the video description, such as the Patreon page and discount retailers for 40k. And I'll also just give a quick shout out to a rather nice Auspex Pin Badge and keyring that I had made for me by a giftware company based in the UK. If you'd like a little Auspex logo done in shiny pewter, they're £7.50 including shipping within the UK, a little bit more to other places around the world, but not excessively so. In any case, a big thank you to anyone supporting the channel, either via this one or the other links down below. I'll leave this one for now though. Hopefully one of the next videos on the channel should be talking about models that most need improvements in the game of Warhammer 40k right now, so stay tuned for that. But in any case, an absolutely enormous thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.